Tick, tock, tick, tock. The rhythmic sound of the clock echoed in the stillness of the night, each tick amplifying the eerie silence that enveloped the room. It was a sound that usually went unnoticed, but tonight, it felt almost deafening.
The clock glowed an eerie green in the darkness, casting an unsettling hue across the room. The light seemed to pulse with each second, a silent reminder of the passing time. It was a stark contrast to the comforting darkness that usually filled the space.
4:36 a.m. Why was I awake? The question lingered in my mind, unanswered. I couldn't remember any dreams or disturbances that might have woken me. It was as if my body had sensed something my mind couldn't grasp.
My heart thumped a slow, irregular beat, each pulse resonating through my chest like a distant drum. It was an unsettling rhythm, one that seemed to sync with the ticking clock. I placed a hand on my chest, feeling the uneven thuds beneath my fingertips.
Something felt wrong. Cold. The air around me was frigid, a stark contrast to the warmth of my bed. I shivered, pulling the covers tighter around me, but the cold seemed to seep through the fabric, chilling me to the bone.
I pulled the covers tighter, trying to burrow back into sleep. Suddenly, a sound. A floorboard creaked just outside my door. The noise was faint, but in the silence of the night, it was unmistakable. My heart skipped a beat and I froze, straining to hear more. My eyes snapped open. Someone was out there. I held my breath, listening intently. Silence. Maybe it was just the house settling. Old houses make noises, right? I tried to convince myself, but the unease in my chest wouldn't dissipate.
Then I saw it. A shadow. It moved slowly, almost deliberately across the wall. My breath caught in my throat as I watched it, unable to look away. Tall and slender, it stretched across my bedroom floor, reaching towards my bed. The shadow seemed to grow longer, darker as it approached. I could feel my pulse quicken, the fear rising within me.
My blood ran cold. The shadow loomed closer and I could see the faint outline of a figure within it. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Was it real, or just a figment of my imagination? The fear was palpable, a tangible presence in the room. I wanted to scream, to call out for help, but my voice was trapped in my throat. All I could do was watch, paralyzed by fear as the shadow crept ever closer.
My mind raced. Was it a burglar, a monster, my imagination? I blinked, hoping it would disappear. It didn't. It was still there, darker than the shadows around it. Fear coiled in my stomach. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing it away. "Go away," I whispered, my voice trembling.
Nothing happened. The shadow remained. I had to be dreaming. This couldn't be real. Slowly, cautiously, I opened one eye. The shadow was still there, closer now. It was almost touching my bed.
I flinched, pulling my legs up tight against my chest. My breath caught in my throat, choking me.
Think, what should I do?
The shadow inched closer, creeping across the floor like spilled ink. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream.
It felt like an eternity, watching it move closer and closer. Each tiny movement sent shivers down my spine. I was trapped, paralyzed by fear.
The shadow reached my bed. It felt cold, so cold. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silence. I couldn't take it anymore. "Help!" I screamed, my voice raw with terror. "Somebody help me!"
The shadow hesitated, and then, it began to retreat, but not away from me. It was moving towards my closet. The door was slightly ajar. The shadow was slipping inside. Just then, a light flickered on in the hallway.
What's wrong? What's going on?
Relief washed over me, warm and sudden. I scrambled out of bed, racing towards the sound of his voice. He stood in the doorway, rubbing the sleep from his eyes.
I had a nightmare. There was something in my room.
He frowned, peering into the darkness.
There's nothing here. Go back to sleep. It was just a bad dream.
He was right. The shadow was gone. The closet door hung open, empty. Had I imagined the whole thing?
Are you sure you're okay?
My brother asked, concern etched on his face. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He patted my shoulder awkwardly and shuffled back to his room. I stood there for a moment, staring into the darkness. The shadows seemed to dance in the faint light from the hallway. My heart still pounded in my chest. I knew what I had seen, but how could I explain it? The next morning I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The events of the night played over and over in my mind. I needed answers. Someone to tell me I wasn't going crazy, someone who might believe me. My grandmother had always been interested in the supernatural. She knew all the local legends and old wives' tales. Maybe she could explain what I had seen. I found her in the kitchen, sipping tea and humming softly to herself. Taking a deep breath, I told her everything. She listened patiently, her dark eyes filled with understanding. When I finished, she nodded slowly, as if she had heard similar tales many times before. Her presence was comforting, a silent assurance that I was not alone in my fears.
Ah, the night visitors, she murmured, more to herself than to me. Her voice was soft, almost reverent, as if speaking of something sacred and ancient.
Night visitors? I echoed, my voice barely a whisper. What are they? My curiosity was piqued, but a shiver ran down my spine at the thought of these mysterious entities.
She took a sip of her tea, her gaze distant. It was as if she was looking into another world, a place where these night visitors roamed freely. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken fears and ancient lore.
They are creatures of darkness, she explained, spirits that wander the night, drawn to the fear of the living. Her words painted a vivid picture of shadowy figures moving silently through the night, unseen but deeply felt.
My blood ran cold. The idea of these spirits, these night visitors lurking in the shadows, sent a chill through me. I could almost feel their presence, a cold breath on the back of my neck.
But why? Why would they come here? I asked, my voice trembling. The thought of these entities being drawn to our home was terrifying. What had we done to attract them?
She shrugged. Perhaps they sense a disturbance, an open door between this world and the next. Her words hung in the air, a chilling reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown.
I glanced out the window, the moon casting eerie shadows on the ground. The night seemed alive with unseen movements, every rustle of leaves and creak of the house amplified in the silence.
She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small talisman, its surface etched with ancient symbols. This will protect you, she said, pressing it into my hand. Keep it close and the night visitors will not harm you.
I held the talisman tightly, its cool surface grounding me. The intricate details seemed to pulse with a life of their own, a connection to something greater and older than I could comprehend.
Thank you, I whispered, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. The fear was still there, but it was tempered by a newfound hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could keep the night visitors at bay.
We sat in silence for a while, the bond between us strengthened by the shared knowledge of the night visitors. In that moment, I knew I was not alone. Together, we would face whatever came our way, armed with ancient wisdom and a small talisman of protection. I stared at her, my mind reeling. Could her stories be true? Were there really things that went bump in the night? She reached across the table and took my hand.
Don't be afraid, she said gently. There are ways to protect yourself.
She told me about ancient rituals and charms, about the power of belief and the importance of respecting the unseen world. I listened intently, clinging to her every word. Hope flickered in my chest. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was a way to keep the night visitors at bay. My grandmother gave me a small pouch filled with herbs and whispered prayers.
Keep this under your pillow, she instructed. It will ward off evil spirits.
I took the pouch, my fingers closing tightly around it. It felt warm in my hand, a tangible reminder of her love and protection. That night I slept with the pouch under my pillow. The herbs filled the air with a faint, earthy scent. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt since the night of the encounter. The night visitors didn't return. Days turned into weeks. The fear that had haunted me began to fade. The initial terror that gripped my heart slowly loosened its hold, allowing me to breathe a little easier with each passing day. The relentless ticking of the clock seemed to carry away the intensity of that night, but it never fully erased the memory. It was as if time was both my ally and my enemy, helping me move forward while keeping me tethered to the past. But the memory of that night lingered. It was a night unlike any other, one that etched itself into the very fabric of my being. The shadows that danced on the walls, the eerie silence that filled the room, and the inexplicable sense of dread that enveloped me. All of it remained vivid in my mind. I often found myself lost in thought, replaying the events over and over, trying to make sense of what had happened. The questions that arose were endless, and the answers seemed just out of reach. I never saw the shadow again. That dark, ominous figure that had sent chills down my spine seemed to have vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. Yet, its absence did little to comfort me. Instead, it left me with a sense of unease, a feeling that something was left unresolved. The shadow had become a symbol of my unanswered questions, a reminder that some mysteries are never meant to be solved. But sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, I would wake with a start, my heart pounding in my chest. Those moments were the hardest. The stillness of the early morning seemed to amplify my fears, making them feel more real and immediate. I would sit up in bed, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps, as I tried to calm myself. The darkness around me felt oppressive, as if it were closing in, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I would lie awake, listening to the creaks and groans of the old house, wondering if I had imagined it all. The house, with its age-old charm, seemed to come alive at night. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the wooden beams, felt like a whisper from the past. I would strain my ears, trying to discern if there was something more to the sounds, something hidden beneath the surface. My mind would race, conjuring up images of what might be lurking in the shadows, and I would question my own sanity, or if something truly sinister had lurked in the darkness of my room. The thought was both terrifying and intriguing. What if there was something out there, something beyond my understanding? The possibility sent shivers down my spine, but it also sparked a curiosity that I couldn't ignore. I wanted to know the truth, even if it meant facing my deepest fears. The darkness held secrets, and I was determined to uncover them, no matter the cost. To this day I keep my grandmother's pouch close by. It is a small, unassuming object, but it holds great significance for me. My grandmother had given it to me years ago, saying it would protect me from harm. At the time, I had dismissed it as a simple trinket, but now, it felt like a lifeline. The pouch was a tangible connection to my past, a reminder of the wisdom and strength of those who came before me. It gave me a sense of comfort and security, something to hold on to in the face of the unknown, a reminder that some things are best left unexplained. There is a certain beauty in mystery, a sense of wonder that comes from not knowing. The pouch, with its unknown origins and purpose, symbolized that for me. It was a reminder that not everything needs to be understood, that some questions are better left unanswered. In a world that often demands explanations and certainty, it was a lesson in embracing the unknown and finding peace in the uncertainty. A reminder that the line between reality and superstition can be blurry indeed. The events of that night had shown me that the world is not always as it seems. There are forces at play that we may never fully comprehend, and the boundary between what is real and what is imagined can be fragile. It is a delicate balance, one that requires an open mind and a willingness to accept that some things are beyond our control. As I look back on that night, I am reminded of the importance of keeping an open heart and mind, and of the power of belief in shaping our reality.